Let me ask you something right now. Who are you watching? Whose life are you measuring yours against? Because the answer to that question might just be the reason you're stuck. Too many people are living their lives as echoes of someone else's voice. But here's the truth. You will never master your calling while staring at someone else's assignment. God did not design you to be distracted. He designed you to be distinct. And as long as your eyes are on others, your energy will be misdirected. You can't build your house while inspecting your neighbor's blueprints. You can't maximize your potential while minimizing yourself through constant comparison. Listen, there's a difference between inspiration and imitation. It's okay to learn from others, but when you start trying to become them, you've left the lane of development and entered the ditch of deception. You are not here to live a duplicate life. You are here to become the original version of the person God imagined when He formed you. Now, here's what happens when you focus on others. You adopt their timeline. You adopt their standards. You adopt their measurements. And because you're living by someone else's metrics, you start feeling behind. You start believing you're not enough. And that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when you flip the script and start focusing on yourself, your mind, your character, your goals, everything changes. The same energy you used to spend scrolling through social media, you can now spend scripting your own destiny. The same time you spent watching other people's wins, you can now invest in building your own victories. Focus isn't just a habit, it's a multiplier. Whatever you focus on will grow. If you focus on distractions, those distractions will grow louder. But if you focus on discipline, your results will grow stronger. The seed that you water is the seed that will bear fruit. There's a reason the Bible says, examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith. Not examine your neighbor, not examine your cousin, not examine the influencer on YouTube. Examine yourself. Because your true transformation starts within. You don't need validation from the crowd when you have confirmation from your calling. Let me tell you something powerful. The greatest breakthroughs in life happen not when you watch others win, but when you watch yourself grow. That's where confidence is born. That's where clarity is found. That's where success is secured. Every time you look over your shoulder to see what someone else is doing, you're robbing yourself of the momentum God gave you. Most people don't lose because they're unqualified. They lose because they're unfocused. They spend too much of their precious energy evaluating someone else's journey instead of executing their own assignment. You can't run at full speed while looking sideways. Athletes know that. CEOs know that. Kingdom-minded entrepreneurs must know it too. There is a reason God gives each person a vision, not a group project. You weren't called to compare what you're building to what someone else has completed. That's not vision. That's distraction dressed up in false humility. Comparison kills more dreams than failure ever will. Because comparison doesn't stop with admiration. It slowly mutates into envy. And when you operate from a spirit of envy, you don't just stop appreciating others, you stop developing yourself. You stop showing up for your own life because you've convinced yourself that someone else already beat you to the finish line. But what if I told you that there's no finish line? That the goal isn't to arrive faster than others, but to arrive as the fullest version of who God created you to be. See, the enemy doesn't always use evil to distract you. Sometimes he just uses someone else's success. He knows if he can get your attention off your assignment and onto their applause, he can silence your impact without even needing to attack you. And this isn't just about social media, although that's the battlefield where most people are losing the war. You scroll for 5 minutes and suddenly your confidence has evaporated. You were excited about your progress until you saw someone else's highlight reel. But progress isn't always public. Just because no one's clapping yet doesn't mean heaven isn't watching. God doesn't grade you on what others are doing. He's measuring your faithfulness, your consistency, your willingness to dig deep when no one is looking. That's what separates spectators from stewards. When you focus on yourself, you take back your power. You stop reacting and start innovating. You begin to understand that your real competition is not the person next to you, it's the person you were yesterday. Growth is not about doing better than others. It's about doing better than your former self. Every day you wake up, you're given a new opportunity to outgrow who you used to be. That's your lane. That's your focus. And that's the secret. Stay in your lane and God will expand it. This is why discipline is more powerful than motivation. Motivation can come from watching someone else's life, but discipline is born when you make a commitment to your own. When you say, I'm going to be better, I'm going to go deeper, I'm going to build something that outlasts my emotions, you're not in competition with anybody. You don't need to rush. You don't need to perform. You just need to align. Align with your values, your purpose, your calling. The clarity comes when the noise stops. And the noise stops when your focus sharpens. There's gold inside of you, but it won't be discovered while you're mining someone else's field. You've got to dig where you are. Water what you've been given. Steward what's already in your hands. Because the miracle isn't out there. It's within you. Hidden inside your obedience, inside your effort, inside your consistency. You can't control what other people think. You can't control what they say, how they move, how fast they grow, or what doors open for them. But what you can control is how you respond, how you prepare, how you sow, and how you show up for the calling on your life. The problem is that most people spend more time managing external distractions than developing internal discipline. They're constantly reacting instead of refining, constantly observing instead of obeying. And the longer they live like that, the further they drift from their own breakthrough. When you spend your life comparing yourself to other people, you're placing your value in their hands. And the moment you do that, you've already lost the battle for your own identity. Comparison doesn't elevate you. It drains you. It robs you of creativity, peace, clarity, and joy. It shifts your focus from what you're capable of building to what someone else has already built. You start doubting your pace, your path, and your progress. You start questioning if you're enough, if you're late, if you're doing the right thing, if your effort is worth it. And all that confusion didn't come from truth. It came from looking outside instead of looking within. The human tendency is to look across instead of looking up. But the truth is, your source is not other people. Your source is divine. And as long as you're drawing identity from others, you're disconnected from your own assignment. You're never going to walk in your true power while you're chasing someone else's results. You're never going to rise in purpose while you're trapped in performance. And that's what comparison creates. It creates performance mode. It makes you feel like you've got to do more to prove more, like your value is on trial and the jury is the audience watching you. But God never called you to perform for the crowd. He called you to produce fruit, and fruit takes time. Fruit requires roots. You can't microwave mastery. You can't copy purpose. You've got to cultivate it. That means doing the hard work no one sees. That means developing your gift while no one's clapping. That means trusting the process even when the results aren't visible yet. And if you keep focusing on others, you'll never develop the patience required for real transformation, because someone else's harvest will tempt you to dig up your own seed before it matures. See, comparison causes confusion, and confusion causes compromise. You start changing your voice to match the trends. You start changing your strategy to match what's popular. You start watering down your uniqueness because you think blending in is the only way to be accepted. But the danger is this: you lose yourself trying to become what you were never designed to be. You silence your originality just to sound like somebody else. And once you do that, you've traded your power for approval. You've given away your authenticity for applause. But when you focus on yourself, you stop seeking permission and start walking in purpose. You stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. You stop mimicking and start mastering. That's when everything begins to shift. You no longer need to impress anyone because your confidence isn't based on competition. It's based on clarity. You know who you are, you know what you carry, and you know why you're here. And when you know those three things, you become unshakable. You've got to stop asking what others are doing and start asking, what am I called to do right now? Not what looks flashy, not what gets likes, not what's trending. What am I called to do? Because that question realigns your heart, your habits, and your hustle. That question removes the noise and brings back focus. That question puts you back in the position of ownership. And ownership is where transformation begins. Your destiny is too big to be built on imitation. Your purpose is too deep to be measured by popularity. You were made to be original, not to echo. And every minute spent watching someone else's lane is the minute you're not building your own. Every second you spend comparing is a second you've delayed your own breakthrough. So the focus must return. The discipline must rise. The clarity must be regained. Because only when your eyes are fixed forward can your feet move in power. Energy is one of the most powerful currencies you have, and yet most people spend it recklessly. They spend it on arguments they don't need to have, opinions that don't matter, and people who were never assigned to their destiny. When you focus on others, you're making an unconscious investment, and that investment has a cost. Every time you scroll and compare, every time you criticize someone else's progress, every time you worry about someone else's strategy, you're using energy that was supposed to be poured into your own assignment. You cannot multiply results if you keep dividing your attention. Energy flows where focus goes, and results follow energy. The reason most people feel stuck isn't because they don't have talent, potential, or opportunities. It's because their energy is scattered. They are emotionally exhausted, mentally cluttered, and spiritually distracted. They've allowed outside noise to drown out inner direction. You cannot hear divine instruction if you are addicted to external validation. And that's what happens when you give your attention to the wrong things. You become a slave to opinions, performance, approval, and applause. You start shaping your life based on how others perceive you instead of what God has already placed inside you. You were created to steward your own garden, not manage someone else's harvest. And stewardship takes focus. It takes a decision to protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You can't pour into your business, your health, your faith, or your family if your energy is constantly being pulled in every direction. Every distraction has a cost, but most people never calculate it. They don't see that the cost of distraction is always greater than the pleasure of curiosity. What starts as a harmless glance at someone else's success becomes a silent thief of your own consistency. There is power in reclaiming your energy. There is freedom in choosing to be unavailable to comparison, to gossip, to negativity, to anything that doesn't serve the highest version of who you're becoming. When you reclaim your energy, you also reclaim your clarity. You stop asking what's working for others and start asking what's required of you. You stop chasing momentum and start cultivating alignment. And alignment doesn't just come from action, it comes from focus. From the moment you wake up, your focus is being negotiated. Every ping, every scroll, every comment is trying to steal your attention. But the most successful people don't chase attention, they guard it. They decide in advance what gets their energy and what doesn't. Focusing on yourself is not selfish, it's stewardship. Is understanding that you've been entrusted with a gift, a calling, a purpose, and that it's your responsibility to multiply what you've been given. And multiplication doesn't happen in chaos, it happens in clarity. The more focused you are, the more productive you become. Not busy, productive. Focused energy is not about doing more things. It's about doing the right things with intensity and intention. It's about showing up with presence, passion, and purpose. When you learn how to direct your energy inward instead of outward, everything changes. You get more done in less time. You find more peace in the process. You begin to attract opportunities that match your purpose. Because focused energy creates momentum, and momentum is what most people are missing. They're taking a step forward, then pausing to compare. They're building for an hour, then checking social media for validation. And that constant start-stop cycle destroys momentum. You were never meant to live distracted. You were never meant to survive on partial focus. You were created to build, to lead, to influence, to dominate in your domain. But you cannot dominate what you do not devote your energy to. And devotion starts with a decision to protect your focus at all costs. There's a difference between activity and advancement. There are people doing 100 things, moving fast, staying busy, looking productive, but they're not growing. They're spinning their wheels in circles, never moving forward because their focus is misplaced. They're investing effort, but not in themselves. They're distracted by what others are doing, consumed by external noise, trapped in cycles of performance and comparison. And the result is burnout without breakthrough, movement without meaning. You can't measure your success by how much you're doing if none of it is tied to your own development. You were never meant to live on autopilot. You were meant to live with intention. And intention begins with investment. You have to decide that you are worth the effort, that your growth is non-negotiable, that your potential deserves more than leftover time and energy. Every day you neglect your development, you delay your destiny. Every time you choose entertainment over education, reaction over reflection, imitation over innovation, you're voting against your future. And it's not because you're not capable, it's because you haven't prioritized the one investment that multiplies everything else, yourself. You don't rise by watching others rise. You rise by building yourself from the inside out. That means investing in your mindset because your thoughts determine your direction. That means investing in your discipline because your habits shape your future. That means investing in your knowledge because ignorance is expensive. And you pay for it not just with money, but with missed opportunities, stagnant progress, and wasted years. Growth doesn't just happen, it's engineered. And the engineer is you. You can pray for increase, but God won't bless what you refuse to build. He multiplies what you're willing to move on. But if you're sitting still, watching others move, there's nothing to multiply. When you focus on developing yourself, you begin to attract what you used to chase. Opportunities come not because you were loud, but because you were excellent. Because you became the kind of person who adds value wherever they go. That kind of value doesn't come from being popular. It comes from being prepared. It comes from becoming so strong in who you are that people can't ignore what you carry. And that strength is not built in the crowd. It's built in the quiet. It's built when you decide to show up, to learn, to stretch, to fail forward, to sharpen your gifts, to study your craft, to strengthen your faith. The world will always try to pull your attention in 100 directions. There will always be someone doing more, posting more, achieving more, or at least looking like it. But your job is not to chase their results. Your job is to chase your refinement, to outgrow your excuses, to outwork your fears, to outlast your distractions. The difference between average and exceptional is not talent, it's focus. It's the willingness to do the work when no one is watching, to invest in your skills when no one is clapping, to believe in your future when your present still looks unfinished. You've got to treat your potential like it's sacred because it is. You've got to protect it, nourish it, and demand results from it. And that only happens when you make a decision to stop being a spectator and start being a steward. Spectators consume, but stewards create. Spectators admire, but stewards advance. And if you want to walk in purpose, if you want to lead, if you want to influence, if you want to change the trajectory of your life, it starts with changing the investment you're making every single day. This is not about perfection. This is about progress. It's about becoming more aware, more intentional, more relentless about your assignment. It's about making the shift from watching to working, from comparing to creating, from existing to evolving. Because every level of growth demands a greater level of investment in who you are becoming. God didn't create you to be a copy of someone else. He created you as an original with a purpose, a voice, a lane, and a vision that nobody else can fulfill. The problem is most people never walk into that original design because they spend their whole lives trying to fit into someone else's mold. They abandon their uniqueness in exchange for acceptance. They trade identity for imitation. And in doing so, they shrink themselves to match the expectations of a crowd that doesn't even know their calling. You cannot carry divine purpose while living for public approval. You can't answer a unique calling with a copied voice. When you focus on others, you slowly begin to erase yourself. You mute your originality. You neglect your own path. You delay your assignment because you're busy reacting to someone else's timeline. And this doesn't just cost you emotionally, it costs you spiritually. It costs you the anointing that flows only when you are aligned with who you truly are. Purpose doesn't respond to performance. Purpose responds to authenticity. And when you finally strip away the comparisons, the pretending, the pressure to keep up, you're left with the one thing that has the power to unlock destiny, your true self. This world is full of noise, and most of that noise is designed to distract you from yourself. The constant stream of opinions, trends, highlight reels, achievements, it can be overwhelming. It can make you question if what you're doing matters, if you're moving fast enough, if you're getting noticed. But success isn't about noise, it's about depth. It's about knowing who you are so deeply that nothing outside of you can shake what's inside of you. When you operate from that place, you no longer live by reaction, you live by revelation. The revelation of who you are comes through stillness, through focus, through discipline. It doesn't come from comparison, it comes from connection. Connection to God, connection to purpose, connection to your own soul. And that connection requires silence. It requires moments where you pull back, shut out the world, and lean into what you were born to do. Not what they're doing, not what's trending, not what looks popular, but what's divine. And that's where the clarity comes. That's where the confidence is built. Not because everything looks perfect, but because you know your steps are ordered. You know your work has meaning. You know your journey has purpose. There's a level of peace that only comes when you stop looking around and start looking within. There's a strength that rises when your eyes are no longer scanning for competition, but are fixed on your own growth. Because when you stop chasing other people's outcomes, you finally get the space to build your own foundation. A foundation built on integrity, on alignment, on spiritual conviction. A foundation that can't be shaken by likes or followers or temporary applause. When you build from within, you're no longer trying to prove anything to anyone. You're simply walking out what was placed in you from the beginning. Focus is not just about productivity. It's about preservation. Preserving the voice God gave you, preserving the vision He showed you, preserving the calling He placed on your life. And that requires separation. Sometimes you have to separate yourself, not because you're better, but because you're becoming more disciplined, becoming more rooted, becoming more aligned with the version of you that heaven already sees. And that version doesn't need to compete. That version doesn't need to compare. That version just needs to commit to the process, to the plan, to the purpose. Every time you take your eyes off others and return them to your own journey, you reclaim your power. You reclaim your focus. You reclaim your identity. And the more consistently you do that, the more unshakable you become. Because your value was never meant to come from outside of you. It was always meant to be drawn from within, from the treasure God placed in you, from the assignment that has your name on it, from the potential that will only be activated when you stop looking around and start looking up. Everything you've been called to become is already inside you, but it will only come alive when you stop giving your power away to distractions, comparisons, and outside noise. You weren't created to chase other people's pace. You were created to walk in purpose. And purpose demands focus. Purpose demands discipline. Purpose demands that you stop trying to fit into someone else's mold and start growing into your own divine design. This journey is not about outperforming anyone else. It's about outgrowing the version of yourself that's still settling for less than what God promised. You don't rise by watching others win. You rise by doing the internal work, the deep, consistent, quiet work that most people avoid. That's where the breakthrough is. That's where peace lives. That's where real power flows. Because when you focus on you, your growth, your gifts, your calling, your alignment, everything begins to shift. Your confidence deepens. Your energy multiplies. Your voice strengthens. You begin to attract instead of chase. You begin to build instead of borrow. And you start to walk not as a copy of someone else, but as the original masterpiece you were always meant to be. You don't need their lane. You don't need their timing. You don't need their affirmation. You just need to return your focus to where it belongs, on your assignment, your refinement, your purpose, and your God-given identity. Because the moment you stop watching and start working, you won't just move forward. You'll move in power.